Star Wars 7 by 7 episode 2630. So with the announcement of the Knights of the Old Republic remake happening, there have been some questions popping up and discussion happening over whether it will actually be made canon. And I don't think that's the case, but I think there's actually a third way to think about this whole canon and legends dichotomy. And we're going to explore that today. Punch it. Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7 by 7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy, and thank you so much for joining me for it. So, as I said at the top, the Knights of the Old Republic remake is happening. We talked about that on a previous episode of the show. It is a video game that dates all the way back to 2003 and it deals with events that happened thousands of years prior to the events of the prequel era. And that, along with its sequel and everything else just about that had been published before 2014, became Legends when Disney rebooted the canon, so that it was only the movies released up until that time and the Clone Wars series, the Dave Filoni / Lucas one, not the Gennady Tartakovsky one. Those were the only things that remained as canon at the time. But there are some wrinkles to that because I can think of at least 3 instances where Legends content is still being made. And by Legends content, I mean stuff that does not fit into the newly established canon timeline. I'll say newly because it's only 7 years old now at this point. That's not exactly new anymore, but still, you get what I mean. First off, we have the Essential Legends collection, which is continuing from Del Rey. They've published 7 books now in the Essential Legends collection, and they've done 2 audiobooks, the Shatterpoint audio and the Rogue Squadron audio, as fully unabridged versions of those, but those 2 books were also released as part of the 7 that they've released so far. But yeah, they not only continue to publish Legends books and make them available for purchase, but they went ahead and created these gorgeous new trade paperback editions of the Legends books that they're now classifying as essential collection books. Then there's actual new Legends storytelling, which is in fact happening. That's happening over with The Old Republic, which is the massive multiplayer online game. It was rolled off of the events of Knights of the Old Republic, as I understand it. I am not that deeply involved in it, which is to say, not really at all, other than what I read on Wikipedia. And I'm starting to learn a little bit more about this as we go. But that game is ongoing, and in fact, they are about to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the game in December of this year, and they are doing so with a whole year-long celebration of stuff, including new content. And so there is an expansion that's coming out later this year, and it involves new storytelling, but it is Legends storytelling. It is storytelling that does not relate to the current canon. And then the third kind of Legends stuff is technically canon in a way, but the way it's written is such that it's really hard to actually apply it to a timeline. And specifically what I'm talking about are, for example, the books from George Mann and now George Mann and Cavan Scott. So Myths and Fables and Dark Legends and the Life Day Treasury. I think the Life Day Treasury, as we talked about in previous episodes, is a little more concrete, a little less legend-like in its telling in some places. And so some of those stories are easier to place in a timeline versus other ones where they tell stories that essentially characters are telling to each other within the galaxy far, far away, but they are not stories that anybody can actually verify against, factual situations that are documented historically in the current canon. And that for me is that sort of third road. It's, kind of like legends that are being told to characters within the galaxy far, far away, but they aren't necessarily historically accurate fact. And I think Pablo Hidalgo even talked not too long ago about one way to, I wish I could remember offhand what the thing was on his Twitter feed, but basically there was a difference in the way a certain story was told in one place versus another place, and he had ideas about how to square that circle, as he put it, by basically saying that just different people can have different accounts of things as they occur in the Star Wars galaxy. And that does make a lot of sense. And as far as this particular game, the Knights of the Old Republic thing, well, thinking about Asper, which is the company that is remaking these other Star Wars games, like they're not bringing those games into canon. Those other games like Republic Commando and even Star Wars Racer and the other ones we talked about the other day, those ones are still firmly rooted in Legends. And I know there's talk about making maybe a couple of tweaks to the Knights of the Old Republic to bring it into our current gaming era, as it were, but I don't know if that necessarily means that they're going to be changing elements of story and aligning it with new canon potentially. I suppose that's possible, but regardless of whether they do, there's another way to think about that remake. Instead of considering it as just Legends, we could consider it as a legend that is told by other characters within the Star Wars universe. You could almost consider it like the Tales from the Galaxy's Edge, like Cecil Stack is telling you these stories that happened in the Star Wars galaxy, but whether they're actually accurate, whether they happened the way that he's telling them, who knows? Maybe the way that you are experiencing the stories in Knights of the Old Republic as a character may not be the way they actually happen, especially considering that the story engine allows you to make different choices and they have branching paths of narrative that happen, and so the choices you make will affect what other choices you can make down the line. And the other thing that's kind of informing my wondering if this is a way forward thinking wise that maybe makes the whole canon Legends thing not as big a deal is I've been re-listening to the audiobook version of Shadowfall by Alexander Freed and narrated by Carol Monda. The thing about it that struck me in particular this time and what kind of inspired this conversation is that the characters in there are all telling stories to each other, and it isn't just in Shadowfall. This is something that Freed actually works in across the trilogy, and I think he does it in Twilight Company as well, if I remember correctly. But the characters are all telling stories to each other about various exploits and battles and whatnot, and of course they're embellishing details, and in some cases, like particularly with Shasna Chaddock, she's outright lying about some of the stories that she's telling. And so yeah, characters tell stories and they don't necessarily tell the perfect factual story in the stories that we're reading in Star Wars canon. So maybe this new Knights of the Old Republic remake and all the Old Republic expansions, including the new ones coming, maybe these are just legends within the galaxy far, far away, within the canon that we know. And these are just stories that other people are telling to each other within that galaxy. And heck, maybe you could even expand that idea to like the Essential Legends collection and onward and onward. But so far I only feel comfortable in suggesting that about the Old Republic at least. But yeah, I think it's kind of a different way of looking at things, and I hope it sparks some ideas in your mind about how that might work, and how maybe we can talk differently or think differently about what is quote unquote canon, and does it matter as much as sometimes we make it out to be. I certainly know that I get a little hung up on it sometimes too. So would love to hear what you think about that. So please chime in wherever you see a comment section related to this episode or at home base for the show at sw7x7.com. I would love to hear what you think. And that is going to do it for this episode of the show. It just remains for me to say thank you so much for joining me for it as always, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.
7x7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited, or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2021 by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.